May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be always acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. It's good to be back among you today. In the past few weeks that I've been away, I've been found myself very much absorbed in some reading. And the more I read around this particular topic or subject, the more I want to read. And I am getting my books lined up on Amazon, and they are going to come to me soon, I hope. Mm-hmm. I have become fascinated with science. Now you need to know that that is an incredible transformation. And particularly with the new physics and what it is telling us about ourselves, our beginnings, and especially the beginnings of the creation and the structure of the universe. And while I am needing the kind of introduction to this kind of material that is in terms that are more understandable to a non-scientific mind, which is what I am equipped with, I am also understanding that as I read these things, there is a considerable complexity to the subject, a deep complexity to this and even to the physicists themselves who are involved in understanding this science, this physics. And there is also a realization on my part as well as on the part of those who are the scientific minds that there is a considerable amount of mystery here. One of the books that has been my companion is called Quantum Theology. And if I've not recommended that to you before, I recommend it to you now. It is the spiritual implications of the new physics. And it's by an Irish Catholic priest who probably won't remain an Irish Catholic priest for very long once his words are studied by those who may be in authority. His name is Diarmuid O'Murchu, and there's probably not a more Celtic name than that. If you would like to know more about it, I'll have the book available during coffee hour so you can take a look at it. But one of the things that O'Murchu does in this book near the end of it is he seeks to list some of the things that are challenges to us. And so I want you to understand some of this complexity just from the things that he has listed here. And so we'll just briefly go through these. One, he says there's a fundamental unity to our universe, transcending all the divisions and distinctions developed by the human mind. The oneness of life is more fundamental than the many divisions and categories we humans have invented. He said we live in a world which is at least 12 billion years old, and that refers only to the presently known cycle of evolution. Even 1 million years is a bewildering concept for many people to maintain. An evolutionary story that unfolded for 95% of that time without any assistance from us humans. A universe where matter is being transformed into light energy at the rate of several million tons per second. Several million tons per second, and the vastness of empty space bristling with energy and vitality. A space dimension of at least 90% void or emptiness and less than 10% matter. We now believe that up to 90% of the matter in the universe is dark, and as yet we know virtually nothing about it. a spiritual time scale of at least 70,000 years that presently has become formal religion. So out of all of that time frame, only 70,000 years have been around in a religious aspect. So here we are dealing with this kind of complexity. And it is amazing to us because even though we need to have it simplified in some ways to understand it, we have to be very careful about oversimplifying it to the point where we make it something that it is not. One of the concerns that I have as a religious person comes from fundamentalism. And one of my biggest concerns about fundamentalism is its tendency towards reductionism, in which we seek to take things of great complexity and reduce them to a simplistic understanding. This transfiguration on this Sunday is one of those types of events. And it seems that we have become so used to it and hearing it so easily read from a gospel, and in the few minutes that we get to spend with it, it seems like, oh, okay, there was Jesus was transfigured. But you know, we can't just blow by this on a Sunday, looking at it and saying, gee, isn't that interesting? And then get on with it without even having begun to wrap our heads around what might be going on here. And so I want to consider the transfiguration as complex and as intricate as the things I just talked about in this new physics. Our problem is that we are unable to comprehend the magnitude of the creation, and we are unable to comprehend the magnitude of the Holy One, God. We are unequipped to handle the fullness of God, of the deity. And instead we are given images in our mind of the divine in the person of Jesus, and we even simplify that. I think of the magnitude of the cosmos and our trying to understand the origin of the universe and the ongoing unfolding of the universe. And then I think about how we approach something like the Transfiguration. It's like trying to tap into the energy generated out of Niagara Falls with a small plug-in adapter to power your new Keurig coffee maker. Think about that. We haven't got the capability of channeling that kind of energy. It will fry what we have as brains. And so too with this idea of transfiguration. One of my favorite poets is Annie Dillard, and in her books, she continues to reflect in her poetry and in her writings and prose about the church and about creation. And she says, she describes church folk. It's not a kind description, so please bear with it. She describes us church folk as cheerful, brainless tourists on a packaged tour of the absolute. She continues, the tourists are having coffee and donuts on deck C, Presumably someone is minding the ship, and the wind seems to be picking up. In another place, she writes, "Does anyone have the foggiest idea of what sort of power we so blithely invoke on a Sunday morning? Or, as I suspect, does no one believe a word of it? The churches are playing on the floor with their chemistry sets, mixing up a batch of TNT to kill a Sunday morning. It is madness to wear ladies' straw hats," obviously a little dated, "and velvet hats to church. We should all be wearing crash helmets. Ushers should issue life preservers and signal flares. They should lash us to our pews." So here, on this Transfiguration Sunday, we have to be very careful with how we might reduce this gospel story this morning to something that is quaint and a little meaningless and perhaps a little obtuse, and perhaps to see it as mystery, as complexity, and as deep. Certainly the responses of Peter, James, and John were inadequate to see and understand what was going on. They were trying to plug their Keurig coffee maker into Niagara Falls energy. And Peter says, "Well, let's build some tents for everybody." What do you think about that? Pretty good idea, huh, Jesus? We have no idea what this transfiguration was like. I mean, we don't even have an idea of what a supernova is, although we try to, or a quark, or some other piece of this new physics. The one thing that I find particularly disturbing to my inner spirit about the new physics is it is incredibly humbling. You cannot stand in the face of it and feel like you are in control. This last Sunday, perhaps a feeling of inadequacy and humility in the face of mystery and what is unknown might be a very good place to begin Lent. Brothers and sisters, we have no idea of the magnitude of what we do. We have no idea of the magnitude of the person of Jesus, of the transfiguration, and of the resurrection. But we know something of it in the deep, deep heart of our spirit that senses the mystery of God at work in our midst. Let us humbly look at the mystery and with unknowing uncertainty say thanks be to God. Amen.
Amen. Amen.